Welcome to the Calm Mom Podcast, the show for ambitious women ready to get off the hot mess express. I know you've got a lot going on. You work so hard, you're raising an incredible family, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. I'm your host, Michelle Grosser. I'm a certified master life coach, attorney, wife, and mom. And years ago, I was right where you are. I was running a busy law practice while raising a family, and I was on the fast track to burnout. I thought I just needed to be more organized or have better routines, but it was learning how to heal and regulate my nervous system that expanded my capacity to gracefully hold more of this big, beautiful life. You too are worthy of an extraordinary life in and beyond motherhood. Learning to be a calm, anchoring presence in your home and at work is going to be your superpower. If you're here to do the inner work that brings a sense of calm amidst the chaos, I'm here to join you on that journey. Each time you press play, your growth continues. So let's get at it. What's up, you guys? It's Michelle here. You are listening to the Calm Mom Podcast. So grateful, as always, that you guys have chosen to spend a little time with me here today. We're going to talk about boundaries today. But before we start, I always like to ask you guys, if you have not yet left the show a 5-star rating and a short review, man, if you could do that today, that would just be like the nicest, most kind thing you could do for me as a listener of this show. If you've learned anything, if you have put any of this stuff into practice and seen it made a difference, if you've had any aha moments, truly the best way you can thank me is to leave a 5-star rating and a short review. And it's not just for me, although I do love reading them. It's really because that's the best way to get the show out in front of other women. And that's really my mission, is to teach as many women, as many people as I can about regulating their nervous system, because I think it's fundamental to how we make this world a better place. So if you would join me in that mission and leave the show a 5-star rating, a short review, make sure you're following the show. That would be so appreciated. So thank you. Okay, so boundaries today, we're going to talk about 5 different ways that we can respond when our boundaries are breached. So 5 different ways that we can kind of take action, because I think in theory, we know the importance of setting boundaries, right? We know that there are things that we should not tolerate or cannot tolerate, or things that do not serve us well, or things that drain us, or whatever it is, right? Even with ourselves, right? We need boundaries around our self-talk. We need boundaries around our own, attention. We need boundaries around our behaviors. We need boundaries around things like social media or what have you. So we know that boundaries are important. And I'm actually going to put a link in the show notes for you guys all the way back to episode 45. In that episode, I kind of walk you through this framework to communicate a boundary. So when we're setting boundaries with other people, how to communicate that, because a lot of times we have been conditioned to feel like boundaries are rude or disrespectful, or we don't even know where to start. So I feel like this is a good place to really get a framework. If you know there's a boundary you've got to set. So I'll link that for you guys. You can check it out. You can listen to it after you listen to this episode. All of that being said, one of the most frequently asked questions I receive in my comments, right, in the DMs, in Restore, inside of Restore group program, is like, what do I do if my friend or my partner or my kids, right, or my parent or my colleagues don't respect the boundaries that I set? And I get that, because that's really tough and it can be really frustrating. And sometimes it can feel like defeating or demoralizing, because we're like, man, I know I have to set this boundary. I've gathered enough courage to communicate the boundary, and I did it in a loving way that I'm proud of. And then this person just completely disregarded it and kept doing all of the things that are in violation of the boundary that I tried to set. And I get all of that. And the truth, as much as I would love to give you here's a 3-step plan when people cross your boundaries, right? I wish life was like that. But it's not. So much of this big work that we do, the answer, there's just so much nuance, right? The answer isn't just black and white, because there's context to consider, and there's nuance in our relationships. And the ultimate truth when it comes to boundaries is that we can only truly control ourselves. It's just a tough pill to swallow, but we cannot control our kids. We cannot control our partners. We cannot control our parents or anyone in our workspaces, like any other human being. I wish we could, but we can't. So when we set boundaries, other people are at liberty to choose to respect them or not. So, I think there's a lot of things we have to take into consideration, and I want to give you guys kind of some things that I think might be helpful. You can play around with these, but ultimately, like, there's some things we have to take into consideration, right? Like, is this boundary violation? Is this unacceptable behavior like an ongoing thing and a pattern? Or is this just like a one-time breach of the boundary that you communicated, right? Those are different scenarios. Is the behavior abusive? That is massively different and is going to require a massively different response, right? There's not a lot of leeway there. Is the other person someone you really care about and that you want to try to have a healthy relationship with? Or is this someone who's kind of been on the periphery of your friend group or kind of like on the fringes, and you've just been like kind of dragging them along with you for the last 15, 20 years, and you're wondering, maybe you're outgrowing their friendship, right? So all of these different, or maybe it's you, like maybe the issue with the boundary being breached is that you aren't being clear about the boundary, right? Maybe you're not being clear about what it is that you're asking for, what it is that you need, but here you are, you're still expecting change. So let's go through 5 different ways that we can respond when a boundary is breached. And then I think, as it relates to yourself setting boundaries, like take what feels like it might be helpful, leave what doesn't. But I think there's going to be something in here for everyone as it relates to boundaries. So the first way that you can respond when a boundary is breached is that you can use really clear language. I love this because it's a Brene Brown thing, but it's so true. And you guys hear me talk about it all the time. Clear is kind. So when you set boundaries, you are going to set clear and concise and short boundaries without all of the superfluous information and details and justifications that we usually want to provide, right? And we talk about that in episode 45. So one of the ways you can respond is that you can use clear language to restate your needs and ask for feedback if you find that the boundary you've set is being crossed. So I think this works, or this is like somewhere I'd go if the relationship was really important to me, right? If this was a relationship that I really wanted to pour into, and I wanted to pursue this relationship and it meant a lot to me, then if I set a boundary and that boundary was breached, I would think that it would probably be okay and worth it for me to like restate that boundary and then manage my expectations for change. Because the truth is that patterns don't become better overnight, right? For ourselves or for other people. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes time for other people to adjust to this new boundary that we've set. It takes time for them to wrap their head around it. It takes time for them to like agree to meet our needs and then actually do that. So you've got to figure out, first of all, how long are you willing to wait, right? What's your time limit? Again, I don't think this really applies to abusive behavior. Like as I set these boundaries through the rest of this episode today, I'm not talking about abusive behavior, but I'm just talking about, basic respect things or things that, are important to you that don't drain you, that so you don't feel so criticized or attacked or like someone's just emotionally unloading on you, like those types of things, right? So if that's happening, that boundary is being breached, figure out how long you're willing to wait and what's your limit, and then use clear language to like restate that boundary to whoever it is you're communicating with, and go ahead and ask them for feedback, right? So you might say something like, hey, I just wanted to remind you that I had asked for whatever the specific boundary is, right? Like I've asked you not to criticize how I feed my kids. And it's really important to me. And like, I understand that I want to feed my kids good food and I'm doing the best that I can. So I just really appreciate your understanding and not being critical of what my kids eat, whoever you're communicating that to, right? And I think that will reinforce, one, your position without escalating the situation. And two, it also shows that you're actually serious about maintaining your limits, right? You didn't just like arbitrarily throw this boundary out and then you're like, well, you can continue to just walk all over me and criticize everything that I do. It's like, no, I really mean this. Like this isn't appropriate. This isn't respectful. And I'm not going to let you continue to be so critical of me in whatever it is. Now, so you say it, right? I know that I know I let you know that whatever the boundary is was important to me, right? And you can ask them, like, is this something you're willing to try to change? Like, is this something you're willing to avoid saying? Is this something you're willing to work on over the next couple weeks? And if you can't, I'm really going to need to reflect on how much time we spend together, because it's really important to me. And when I leave time with you and you've just been criticizing me and my parenting for the last hour or so, like, it's really draining to me, and it makes me leave feeling really bad about myself, and it makes me question if I'm a good mom, or like all the things, right? And I don't feel like I'm being respected. And you can just leave it at that and then reassess, right? Watch what happens and reassess. And then the second thing that you can do if a boundary is being breached is that you can set clear consequences and be consistent with them, guys. Follow through with them, because boundaries without consequences are not boundaries. We know this with our kids, right? If we tell them, like, I don't know, no cookies before dinner, and then they eat a whole box of cookies and then nothing happens, like, that's not really a boundary that we've set for them, right? They clearly understand that they can push and breach that boundary and no one cares and nothing happens. So we want to make sure that we're clearly outlining what's going to happen if the boundary that we have set continues to be violated. And I'm not really talking about ultimatums here. I'm just talking about something like, hey, if this boundary isn't respected, I'm going to, and that's the key here, right? We can't control anyone else's behavior. So you need to do this or you need to do that isn't going to get us anywhere, because we can't control what other people do. But we can control our own responses and our own reactions and what invitations we accept or decline and where we take our family and how we spend our time. Those are all things that are within our control. So if this boundary isn't respected, I'm going to need to, limit my contact with you, or I'm going to need to step back from coming over every Saturday, or I'm going to, whatever it is, it's your action that's going to be the consequence, or inaction. And I think establishing consequences helps to reinforce, again, the seriousness of your boundary, and it helps to demonstrate your commitment. And this applies in all sorts of settings, right? Like, it could apply to work. Like, hey, if I don't hear back from you by, Thursday at 5, I'm not going to be able to complete this project this week, even though you asked me to, right? I don't check my emails on the weekends. That's a boundary. So I'll respond to you on Monday, right? Or if you continue to, comment on my weight or my appearance every time you see me, I'm not going to continue coming to visit you on Sundays after church, or whatever it is, right? So that's number 2. It's just setting clear consequences and then actually following through and being consistent with them. The third thing we can do, the third way we can respond when a boundary is breached, is we can practice regulating our nervous system. We practice regulating our nervous system when we're calm, you guys, so that when we are triggered and that boundary is breached and it's like activating us and we can start to feel our blood pressure rise, right? That twitch in our eye starting to come forth because we're so annoyed that our boundary is being disrespected again, right? We have been practicing regulating our nervous system when we're calm, so that now in the moment when we're being triggered, we're better able to regulate our nervous system. So what does that look like? So many different regulation resources that we talk about on the podcast, but it might look like, pausing, right? Instead of reacting quickly, interrupting that pattern of quick reaction where you just say the first thing that comes to mind, or like just word vomit when you're upset, right? It might look like starting to really hone in on noticing your somatic cues. I love teaching about this because it's so helpful. Start to notice what happens in your body when you start to get annoyed or frustrated or feel like you're being disrespected or angry or whatever it is. We all have ways in which our body communicates that to us. We call those our somatic cues. So maybe, like me, maybe you get a pit in your stomach. Maybe you get like your breathing changes and you notice you start to breathe differently. Maybe your voice changes. Maybe you get louder, or maybe you get more quiet, right? That's what I do. When I'm like super mad, I get so quiet. It's like creepy. So just notice, right? Maybe your palms get sweaty. Maybe your face gets red. Maybe tears well up in your eyes and you feel like you're going to cry. Those are somatic cues telling you, hey, pause and go take a moment, like take a time out to regulate before you come back, so you don't say something that you end up regretting or, pop off. You could journal, journal when you're calm, right? Journal about your thoughts, journal about your feelings, journal about these things that are going on so you can help process them when you're in a calm, regulated state, not when you're in the moment. And then guys, like I think some of the most basic stuff we can do to help ourselves stay regulated so we're not so triggered is taking care of ourselves in the most basic ways. Like there is a reason that the term hangry exists, right? It's because when we are hungry, we are more likely to get triggered by stupid stuff, right? Or big stuff. Same thing, like if we're not hydrating well, major impact on our brain function when we're even slightly dehydrated. Sleep, right? When we are tired, like little things feel like big things. It's easy for us to overreact or feel overwhelmed. So just making sure that we're taking care of our bodies and our nervous system when we're not in the moment of a boundary being breached, which is essentially like preparing us. It's like training so that when we are triggered by a boundary being breached, we can just respond and handle it in such a more graceful, present way. So that's number 3. Number 4, a fourth way that we can respond when a boundary is breached. And this one's tough, but we can really just disengage with the person or remove ourselves from that situation. So, I mean, the truth is, and this is also a tough pill to swallow, is that there are going to be some people who just refuse or cannot, like they may be unable to honor the boundary that you're setting. And it might be through their own like stubbornness. And it might also be that they like literally lack the self-awareness to honor your boundary, right? Maybe they're so stuck in toxic patterns that they don't even see and notice what they're doing and saying that's so harmful, and they're breaching your boundaries in that way. Maybe you're dealing with someone who's just, I don't know, a narcissist, or they think they're always right, or it's someone who has super strong opinions and like they can't get off their high horse, like whatever it is, guys. People like that, like let's just be real. We're not going to be able to force or change or control them into respecting our boundaries. We don't even want to, right? That's exhausting. So at that point, we've really got to ask ourselves some tough questions, right? Am I willing to continue this relationship, understanding that this boundary is not going to be respected and that I'm going to leave feeling demeaned, disrespected, exhausted, drained, belittled, like whatever, like can I stomach that for an hour a month or like whatever it is? Or like asking yourself, like, is this worth my time and energy? And maybe it is. And you prepare yourself and you put up with it in little spurts here and there. And maybe it's not, guys. Like this is different if this is a close family member or if this is like that friend from freshman year that's just like drives you nuts and you don't know why you still spend time with her, right? Because if it's not worth your time and if it's not worth your energy, like you've got to work on your own inner boundaries and you've got to make a choice, a tough choice maybe, right? If you need to continue engaging with them beyond the bare minimum. So maybe that looks like, I don't know, leaving the group chat. Maybe that looks like, not hanging out with them so often or at all anymore, right? Maybe it means like stop listening to their advice or asking them for their opinions. You can reflect on that and kind of see how you think is best to respond if someone's just continuing to refuse. How are you going to disengage or how are you going to remove yourself from that situation if you're just continuing to be disrespected? And then number 5, the last one that I put here, when your boundaries are being breached, is to get support, you guys. For so many of us, healthy boundaries just weren't modeled as a child. It's not something our parents talked about. I don't even know if it was on their radar, right? We were not taught these things. So for a lot of us, it can feel really uncomfortable and foreign and frustrating to set boundaries. Like we would rather crawl into a hole and just hide there than like talk to someone face to face and be like, I need you to stop doing this. Or if you do this, then I'm going to do this, right? Like that can feel really uncomfortable. I get it. Like protecting your peace is easier said than done. But here's the thing. Practice leads to progress. And if you can change your mindset around setting boundaries and see them as so important to healthy relationships and understand a really healthy and loving and respectful and beautiful way to communicate your boundaries that is not an ultimatum and does not make the other person feel immediately defensive or like they've done something wrong. Like it really feels like a collaborative conversation. I think that that's so, so beautiful. But a lot of us, it's not intuitive, right? We need to be taught how to do this and walked through it. So I think that, seeking advice or talking with someone about the boundary you want to set or what's going on with it can really help. One, I think it helps provide you with validation and support, right? And advice. You can call someone you trust up and be like, hey, I've really been struggling with this boundary that I'm trying to set with this person, What are your thoughts about it? I'd love your perspective, right? I'd love your support on how to handle it, and just lean into your support systems. That can really help bolster, I think, your resolve in setting and holding the boundary, because it does take some resolve, and also help provide you with like new insights and mindsets and like frames of thought when it comes to the importance of setting and holding that boundary. And man, like don't shy away from asking for help along the way, right? Call a trusted friend, call a mentor, work with a therapist or a coach. And I would love it if you guys would join Restore. We spend a whole week inside of Restore talking about boundaries. Restore is our group coaching program to regulate your nervous system and heal from burnout. And it's so stinking good, if I do say so myself. But we've got so many testimonials that would agree with me. And our fall cohort starts in mid-September. So start planning now. If you've been wanting to join us in Restore all year long, this is the last cohort of 2024. And we spend a whole week inside of it coaching around boundaries. So I'm going to give you guys a fresh take on boundaries, how to set them, how to hold them, how to enforce them, a whole framework and exercises that you're going to walk through around where you might benefit from boundaries around your own attention and your own bandwidth and your own behavior and your own inner child. That's a boundary that so many of us neglect or we're not even aware of. So if you've been wanting to join us inside of Restore, and you've been wanting to work on boundaries, 2 birds with 1 stone, my friend. So go ahead, you can click on the link in the show notes. You can get on the wait list for the fall round of Restore. So you can be the first to get all the information when registration opens for the fall cohort. So you can make sure that you save your spot before we fill up. So there's no cost to be on the wait list. You're basically just saying, hey, I want to be one of the first, like in that first group, to get information when registration opens, so that you can take a look at it, see if it's for you, and then make sure to grab your spot before we fill up. And let me just wrap this whole thing up with like self-compassion, not as an afterthought, but it really is just so important, guys. Setting boundaries, like you've got to be gentle with yourself during this process. You've got to remind yourself, like enforcing boundaries is a form of self-respect. Enforcing boundaries is essential to your mental health. Enforcing boundaries is essential to your emotional and relational health. So you might even have like this little mantra that you tell yourself, like, it's okay for me to set boundaries, right? It's okay for me to stand firm in this. I am worthy of having my boundaries respected. And self-compassion goes so far in all of that, right? It helps you stay grounded. It helps you stay resilient, even if you face, or even when, maybe I should say, even when you face some pushback on the boundaries that you're setting. All right, my friends, I'm believing that this was helpful for somebody. I think that setting boundaries is lifelong work, and our boundaries and the people we're interacting with and the way our life looks, it's always evolving and changing. So I think there's always new needs for new boundaries, and for us to kind of take a look at the boundaries we have in place and evaluate them and pivot and adjust and tweak. So believing that this episode was timely and it helped you wherever you're at with setting your boundaries. I am so grateful you guys tuned in today. I love y'all so much. I'll talk to you soon.
If you love Mommy's Podcast, leave a review.
If you enjoyed this episode, it would be so awesome if you could take a moment to subscribe and rate the podcast. And if you have just a few more seconds to leave a quick review, they really help to get this podcast out to other moms like you. I read every last review, and trust me, when it's late at night or early in the morning before my kids get up and I'm working on bringing you all of this content, your reviews are what keep me going. Leaving a review is truly the best way you can thank me. And of course, DM me on Instagram. I love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to another episode. Head over to the show notes for this episode and all past episodes at michellegrosser.com, where you'll find free resources and more ways to connect with me. If you love the show, share it with a friend. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next time.